Wow, what a beautiful morning. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and the coffee. Well, yeah, so this might take a little while. In the meantime, do you know what I was thinking? Just like the old coffee that got thrown out, sometimes it's actually not a bad idea to get rid of something that's old in order to make way for something new and fresh. And I'm not talking about my ex. I'm actually talking about 5-level upgrade training and the new occupational competency model. See what I did there? Now, trust me, I know what you're thinking. If it isn't broken, then why try and fix it? Well, that's exactly the point. The reality is, the current way that we conduct AFE training really is broken. Good morning, Airman Hernandez. You look a little bit confused. How about we try and break this down for you? But in order to do that, we have to go back. Way back. Now, the crazy thing is, way back in the day, upgrade training looked very similar to the way it does today. In fact, the way we train hasn't really changed much since the dawn of man. For decades, technician training has pretty much looked something like this. An airman shows up to their duty station fresh out of tech school. They're going to be excited, optimistic, and ready to get to work. They begin their training. They start by getting trained on a piece of equipment. Then, they continue training on that piece of equipment every day, day after day. Until eventually, they're ready to be signed off. And to get signed off, they have to complete the dreaded task evaluation. And of course, the airman is going to select the best piece of gear with absolutely zero flaws. The whole process is outdated and just not very reflective of a real-world situation. And on top of that, once they are signed off, they move on to another section, and then another. And they might not see that first piece of equipment that they were signed off on for months or possibly over a year later. And this just continues over and over, all the way up until they receive their 5-level. Unfortunately, by that time, all proficiency is out the window. And as a new 5-level, how comfortable do you think they'd feel inspecting the gear they've been signed off on but haven't had hands on in months if they were in a deployed environment?
I'm gonna need that helmet over here, Airman LeBlanc.
It's sad to say, but that's probably how you were trained, and how your trainer was trained, and how their trainer was trained. And even how their trainer was trained. But not anymore. Let's talk about the new occupational competency model and how it's going to revolutionize the way we train and operate. Let's start with the way we train. Hey there, Airman LeBlanc. I have a quick question for you. If all you did was bring in donuts to work, you wouldn't call yourself a baker, would you? No, of course not. In order to call yourself a baker, you'd have to learn how to mix ingredients, work with the dough, and then fry it all up to perfection before you could give yourself that title, right? And that's exactly what the new occupational competency model is all about. Understanding your role as an aircrew flight equipment technician from beginning to end. And that begins with understanding the basic competencies which will be applied to all items that an airman will be trained on. These competencies will be listed in Section 2 of the Career Field Education and Training Plan. These These are the skills that will need to be mastered before actual equipment training begins. The competencies consist of things like understanding theory of operation, or why it is important to know how a piece of equipment works. Also, concepts like navigating through technical orders, verifying serviceability of tools and testers, and documenting your inspections in A-Firms, everyone's favorite database. Now, you get to A-Firms by logging onto the portal and typing in DPass. You'll know you're there because you'll see the word ELMS in the upper left-hand corner. You know what? Never mind that for now. All of these competencies need to be learned and mastered before equipment training can begin. Once these behaviors are understood, an airman will then have the skill set to apply them to all their training moving forward. Non-equipment tasks are a little different. Once a task is identified, it needs to be linked to a specific behavior in the occupational competency model. Let's take supply, for example. The supervisor will identify the task to the airman. They will then show them how to perform the task. The airman will then need to accurately demonstrate the behavior. Once the airman is capable of demonstrating the behavior, they are ready to be signed off. You might also notice that equipment items look a little different on the task listing. Equipment items are no longer identified by type. For instance, yes, there are many different types of oxygen connectors, but overall, they're still just oxygen connectors, and that's how they'll be classified, as a single item. This will drastically reduce the time that airmen and their supervisors spend signing off items in my training. And if an airman was asked to inspect an oxygen connector they've never seen before, then they need to speak up and ask for training. Now, speaking of saving time in my training, you may notice that all subcategories like disassemble, inspect, clean, and reassemble under each equipment item have disappeared. That's because once an airman displays the ability to master and apply the aforementioned competencies to the equipment they've been signed off on, it is implied that all of the subcategories are completed, and there is no need for anyone to sign off so many different items for only one piece of gear. So yeah, they're gone. Oh, and remember the dreaded task eval I mentioned earlier? Well, that's gone too. Bye, Felicia. Moving forward, airmen will be evaluated on their ability to do the job in a real-world, daily environment. That means subtly observing on a day-to-day basis an airman's QCI performance and ability to come in, do the job, and do it well, and with minimal to no supervision. Yeah, maybe a little more subtle, but ultimately, this will be key in deciding when an airman is ready to be signed off. The next thing to focus on is repetition and proficiency. Once an airman is signed off on a piece of equipment, trainers and supervisors need to make sure that their airman doesn't just leave that section never to return. The key is to funnel them back into the sections where they've already been certified. And it needs to be done on a daily or weekly basis in order to maintain their proficiency. That means the schedule of an airman in upgrade training might look something like this. Current section upgrade training in Chem on Monday and Tuesday and on Wednesday. Then back to a previously certified task like helmets on Thursday or Flightline on Friday. The goal here is to ensure that immediately after being awarded their 5-level upgrade, if your airman is tasked to deploy, they will do so with the ability to operate unassisted or with very minimal supervision.
Doing a hell of a job, Airman LeBlanc!
And that's basically what the new occupational competency model is all about. It's about focusing first and foremost on producing a top-of-the-line, 5-level airman that can hit the ground running, any place, anytime. Pretty simple, right? Oh, and one other thing. Well, there you go. Until next time.